Star Wars: The Acolyte. Last episode released July 16th, 2024. Released on Disney+. Creator Leslie Headland. Stars Lee Young-jae, Amandla Stenberg, and Manny Jacinto. Welcome back to Real Reviews like always. I am your host, Lee. It has been a while since I reviewed a show. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. I didn't include any review scores in the intro, and I won't include any pictures of reviews, and no links to review sites. I am doing this because, well, there is a problem on both sides with the reviews. It was review bombed. That isn't even really in question. But the toxic positivity crowd also hurt this show. There were a lot of conversations about this show that were middle of the road, but a lot of those were drowned out. If you want my short, simple, and to-the-point review. It is an okay show with some good characters, honestly some great characters, a decent enough story, several issues with not only the pace of the story itself but issues caused by the choices in episode length, and where episodes would end or begin. Let's get into some questions, and then we will get into some breakdowns of the finer points.
How does The Acolyte explore the darker aspects of the Force that have been less emphasized in previous Star Wars films and series?
The biggest thing they really do is show the seduction of the dark side, which is something Leslie Headland stated she really wanted to show. And she does this in an interesting way where the Jedi seem more deceptive than the characters that wield the dark side, unlike those like Palpatine and Snoke. Also, in this show, I think the reasons for the character of May and Osha being tempted by the dark side is more interesting than we have really seen in Star Wars before this point.
In what ways does The Acolyte challenge or reinforce the traditional hero-villain dynamic seen in earlier Star Wars entries? Does it present a nuanced view of good versus evil?
This show does an excellent job of playing with these roles. We get looks into characters not being reliable narrators, many having dark secrets. Heck, for most of the series we get a story we are expected to believe that turns out to be a lie. As this show is a mystery show, good and evil are far less relevant than who is right and who is wrong. I think the nuance that really comes in is that good isn't always right and evil isn't always wrong.
What impact do the series' antagonists have on the unfolding events and character development? Are they memorable and distinct within the Star Wars villain pantheon?
By episode 4, we find out that Kimmer is the one behind May's actions, and he is tempting her, using her trauma so that he can get what he wants. I think that he is a highly memorable villain. First, there is his odd helmet that looks dented and misshapen and makes it so distinct. And then there is the fact that at least up to this point, he seems far less evil or malicious than prior villains we have seen. This show brought in a lot of things from Legends, and hints at many more things. We get to see Cortosis for the first time. They show just a quick shot of Darth Plagueis. We get to see the bleeding of a lightsaber, both the crystal and the blade. So this is a show that had some very critical defining traits about it. The first and potentially most important thing is that this show cannot be reviewed in a meaningful way, doing it episode by episode. Doing so leads to arguments over misunderstandings. Rage baiting and toxic positivity both played parts in making the discourse around this show unbearable. So one of the biggest issues with this show is the pacing. This is caused by three things. The first being an issue that honestly a lot of the live-action Disney shows have, which is inconsistent episode lengths. This caused some to feel rushed, and some to feel pretty decent. The second is caused by breaking the episodes at odd spots, which lead directly to issues of how the episodes felt. The last is that Disney doesn't seem to give a set number of episodes a season for these shows. This show had 8, Ahsoka was the same, Andor had 12, and Bad Batch had 16. Another issue is the flashback episodes in my opinion. Not that they are there, but where they are located. With one being episode 3 and the other being 7. I think the placement of the first flashback being episode 3 was fine, but the one at episode 7 was a bad choice. A lot had to be wrapped up in a short period of time because that only left a single episode to close out the story. There are plenty of solutions to resolve all of this. First off, just show the flashback episode that is episode 7 around the episode 4 or 5 slot, and get rid of the episode 3 flashback since it is the lie anyway. One of the few failings of the show's writing is that it acts like the audience isn't in on the mystery. Not one of the mysteries of the show was so crazy that the audience couldn't figure it out. If they had played into that and made it a mystery for only Osha, it would have worked great. And they could have had an extra episode to work out some of the pacing issues. Let's talk about all the things that supposedly ruined canon. 1. Ki-Adi-Mundi being in the show because his birthday was previously disclosed. His age was only stated in a CD-ROM tie-in for a magazine, and that had loads of information wrong. We also have never gotten a canon answer as to the life expectancy of Syrians. 2. Ki-Adi-Mundi saying that no Sith have been seen in 1,000 years in The Phantom Menace makes no sense due to this show and him being in it. This was all explained in the last episode since Vernestra covered up the whole thing. Oh, and we have yet to be given confirmation that Kimmer is a Sith. Currently, we only know that he is a fallen Jedi. 3. May and Osha existing breaks the prophecy and makes Anakin less important. There are obviously some differences in how Anakin was brought about as a living virgins in the Force versus how May and Osha were created by a virgins. I will point out that the show doesn't point out definitively how they were created. We get a few short lines from the witches and a few lines from the Jedi, but never get an answer. But I want to point out something critical about the prophecy, and we'll be quoting it directly from Master and Apprentice. Only through sacrifice of many Jedi will the Order cleanse the sin done to the nameless. The danger of the past is not past, but sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the galaxy entire. When the Force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the Force be restored. The prophecy is specifically gendered, so Sol and the other Jedi wouldn't even think that May or Osha is the chosen one, since they aren't men. So the fact that we don't know the specifics of their birth yet, and the fact that they aren't men means them existing creates no issues with the prophecy. Those points are issues that I have with modern criticism of Star Wars. A lot of people want to be loud but don't bother being correct. Or they use something that was never canon as a reasoning. Look, I know Legends or the EU was extremely popular for Star Wars, but even Lucas didn't really view it as canon, which Dave Filoni pointed out in a 2017 interview with comicbooks.com. I don't want to ever tell people that what they enjoy doesn't matter, but any one person's enjoyment isn't more important or more valid than another person's. At this current point in time, canon is only media made after 2015, and there is so much canon, comics, books, video games, shows, etc. All of it isn't perfect, but dang, some of it is good. Let's get back to reviewing things. The acting in the start of the show is extremely stilted and stiff. It starts to clear up as we get further in. Yord was very obviously written to be that extremely by the rules idealistic warrior, and it shows. Honestly, the actor did a fantastic job portraying that. Sol was done well, as he slowly unravels. So does the performance to fit. I can admit that May and Osha never feel quite right, but I think that is done intentionally, as neither is complete as they are two parts of the same person. Ultimately, I don't think anything in the acting is any more egregious than acting in any other Star Wars projects. I can acknowledge that the writing seems a bit off, but there are likely two causes, those being the pacing, which we already talked about, and the show being expected to have more than one season. I think that any of the writing choices that feel off by the end will be wrapped up if the show continues. I don't think that anyone can be upset with the choreography of the show. It is the best in any modern Star Wars project, and comparable to the prequels, but with being a bit more down-to-earth and realistic. I would also like to point out that this isn't a wartime story, unlike basically every other Star Wars media. These Jedi know how to use a lightsaber, but it mostly isn't practical knowledge. They don't have a lot of need to fight. One thing I'm not a fan of is the cameos. Honestly, why are Ki-Adi-Mundi and Yoda in this show at all? They didn't need to. It didn't add anything to the show. This could easily be a personal issue because I want Star Wars to pull away from the Skywalker saga, and each time they have one of these cameos, it just keeps linking back to play it safe. Overall, I gave this show a 6 out of 8 or a 7.5 out of 10. This is almost exclusively due to how they managed episodes and pacing. I hope if they get a season 2, a lot of this will be cleaned up. Like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I typically have at least 2 videos out per week, real reviews like this or AI reviews depending on releases. Tomorrow I will have a real review of Twisters. Until next time,